And good afternoon. We welcome you in. It's the Patrick Netherton Show right here on 1130 The Tiger, 103.3 FM as well. Rogers, normal shenanigans, what we did this weekend, all of that doesn't matter. We got business to tend to right off the top as we welcome in the head coach of the #1 LSU baseball squad. He is Jay Johnson. Coach, what's up, man? How are you?
Doing great. How are you today?
Well, I mean, I'm not #1 in anything. My mom told me I was #1 one time, but I think she was just being nice. You've got real people telling you you're #1. Let's start with just that before we kind of get into the weekend that you just had. Expectations. How do you manage them? How do you deal with them? Because everyone and their brother seems to think you guys are a shoe-in for Omaha and national champion or bust. All of that. How do you deal with expectations?
Yeah, you make our expectations of players very clear. And for us, it's about maximum effort towards preparing well, be the most prepared team on game day, and then maximum effort to executing your individual job that's going to help us win on game day. Baseball is about the team that plays the best that day, not the team with the best players. So no entitlement around here. We're just putting our head down, going to work, and trying to perfect our process of winning. And I like our team, and I like their discipline in doing that. So really that doesn't have any bearing on anything, and I really mean that when I say that. So proud of our team so far with how they've dealt with all of that.
Well, obviously a terrific opening weekend against Western Michigan. I will say, Coach, that's one of the opening weekend and really early weekends in college baseball are one of my favorites because you get so many – I don't want to say weird matchups, but you get so many odd matchups, right? The snowbirds are coming down from the north to escape, the blizzards and the winter weather to play baseball. I'm just curious, when you go about setting these types of matchups, how do you go about and approach it? Because I know there has to be a lot of northern teams that are reaching out to you guys to say, hey, we'd like to come down and get some early season warm weather. That's got to be fun to kind of have these sort of different matchups against a team that you may never see again in any point in time.
Yeah, for sure. And I have a kind of a unique track record. Been in most of my career in the West. And so now coming out here to the South, by the time I retire, I might have bitten off every college baseball team in America. At least I hope that's the way that it is. But, yeah, this is just we're looking for variety in our schedule. RPI is really important. Your ratings percentage index, that's how they select teams for the NCAA tournament relative to bids, hosts, national seeds, all that type of thing. So you want to have a balanced schedule. Obviously, playing in the SEC, it's the best conference in college baseball by a mile. So we can afford to have a little bit of variety in our schedule. And we're just thoughtful when we put it together. And, yeah, it was a good opponent this weekend who I think will win a lot of games in the MAC this year.
Obviously, you'll see all the in-state opponents midweek as you go along. You've got a big tournament coming up at the upcoming weekend of the Round Rock Classic. But I actually want to skip forward. I know coaches hate not thinking about whatever the next game is, though. Explain to me the Butler Central Connecticut state schedule. You play on Friday against Butler, then Saturday and Sunday against Central Connecticut State, then Butler again on Monday. Kind of how did that work?
Well, I want to say we had an opponent scheduled, and they pulled out on us rather late.
Okay.
And I can't even remember who it was at this point. And then Butler has a new coach, and so I posted the opening. He jumped on it quickly, and so we went ahead and agreed to it. And then Central Connecticut State called me the next day, and they were an NCAA tournament team 2 years ago. Matter of fact, they played LSU in the Eugene Regional, and so that's a team we're always kind of hunting to play as a mid-major that's going to win a lot of games, and they fit or have a good winning percentage, and they fit into that category. So we felt like it would benefit us from an RPI standpoint to bring them down here and make it 2 against both teams instead of 4 against Butler.
Right. Is that a concern at all about playing a 4-game weekend as opposed to a 3-game weekend?
Well, when you have the SEC tournament, you have one less weekend. And now pretty much everybody plays a conference tournament now. So you have 2 weeks where you probably have to fit 5 games in. I think for us, there's only one 5-game week, actually, and we're able to play 56. So that's just the 1 week where we have 5 games in a weekend, and that's just kind of how it worked out.
Talking to Jay Johnson, head coach of the LSU baseball squad. All right, let's look at your team from this past weekend. Positives and negatives for you. What did you like? What do you think you need to work on?
What I liked is I think it was a template or a sustainable model for winning. Starting on the mound, we got really good starting pitching. I think in 14 and 2/3 innings, the starters gave up 1 run. So you start there. You're going to be in the game in the 6th inning if you get that type of pitching performance. Threw a lot of strikes out of the bullpen. Played errorless defense for 3 games. Players did a good job defensively. And offensively, we hit a lot of balls hard. Did not get discouraged hitting a lot of balls hard right at people. And we really moved the offense well. That's a term that I use and we use around here a lot. What I mean by that is like we had 11 chances with a runner at third and less than 2 outs, and every one of those guys scored.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is really good because that will translate into SEC play. That will translate into NCAA tournament play. I think maybe it's not necessarily a negative, but I think, we have a lot of talented players. So working on the right combination of fitting guys in the right spots, there'll be some fluidity with that. And we won't look the same from game to game because there's a number of guys that can do a good job for us. And I think we saw that this weekend. So we probably got a ways to go to kind of figure that part of it out. I don't know if it's just a negative. It's just kind of a matter of fact.
Sure. Well, and typically coaches, especially at your level, will use those midweek games to tinker a little bit. But I've heard you talk about the fact that you're not necessarily tinkering. You're just going with whatever the game in front of you dictates. How do you sort of evaluate guys and maybe get some guys some opportunities when you are looking to win every single game and it's not necessarily about, hey, even if we win or lose, I need to find this out about this kid?
Yeah, I try to be outside the box a little bit with that. And I'll give you an example. We had a 6-1 lead in probably the 6th inning yesterday, and I had so much confidence in our pitching staff and the depth of the roster. I think we played 18 position players yesterday.
Wow.
And it was a 9-2 game. And got some guys defensive time, got some guys some at-bats. Was really happy that all of our active position players got in this weekend. Most of them got in at least 2 of the 3 games. So I think I just look for unique opportunities that way. We certainly evaluate pitching matchups where we feel like a guy could be successful. And there's some good competition right now. I mean, we had the number 1 high school class, number 1 transfer class, got some good returners, and it's a good blend of speed, power, hitting skills, defense. And I think our players understand that there's more than one guy that can get the job done. And so we'll be tested, but right now the sense of team is really good, and I just look for every opportunity I can to evaluate. And we always talk about wanting to win while we're figuring out what our best team is or how our team should play, or how we should play our team, I guess is a better way to say it. So right now the players have done a good job of that and just have a real mature approach about what we're doing.
Do you have a target date for when you go, okay, I kind of have set in my mind what I want the lineup to look like, what I want the rotation to look like, who are my first guys out of the pen? Do you have is that first week of conference play? Is it, hey, I might know next weekend? Do you have a feel for kind of when you will start to settle in on some of that?
I think there's some value in consistency. I think when you have a team of depth and talent, one thing I think it's my job as a coach is to not undermine our talent. And so therefore I don't feel like I should box us into anything. I think I should communicate well with our players what we need out of them throughout the year. And so I have a lot of conversations one-on-one with our players, work with our players one-on-one individually about the things we need them to do. So it allows for us to continue to use a lot of guys. And again, this is a talented group of players. I mean, we have guys that will be in and out of the starting lineup that I believe will play Major League Baseball someday. And that's pretty crazy to think about that, but I really believe that. And so no, the answer is no. And I can certainly understand why coaches want to do that. And there could be some benefit of that, but that's probably not where we're at with this team this year.
Talking to Jay Johnson, the head coach of the LSU baseball squad. Obviously, injuries play a part. We saw you lose a pitcher before the season began. Tommy White, we saw the injury to him. Tell us about him and maybe update kind of whatever injuries you may or may not be concerned with.
Yeah, everybody was watching its opening day. It's the first inning, and in Tommy's first at bat, he does exactly what we brought him here to do: smash a first pitch curveball up the middle for an RBI. On the first pitch, he saw the Tiger, and then Trey Morgan came up and hit a sacrifice fly. We're rolling. It's 2-0, and I mean, I don't know why the pitcher picked over to first base in a 2-0 count with a non-runner over there, but he kind of, subluxed his shoulder. Slide him back into the bag. It was really sore. Immediately, we got it back into place. It was sore the next day. We had a lot of improvement yesterday. He was available to pinch hit yesterday. Decided not to do that. We'll kind of see where he's at tomorrow with batting practice, and then maybe available tomorrow. My hope is he's more available by the time we play this weekend.
Yeah, that's obviously a big weekend upcoming. Early season, Coach, and I know a lot of coaches like to talk about, hey, we're worried about ourselves, not necessarily the opponent. How much do you worry, when Western Michigan comes in and it's the first weekend of the season and they've got new guys and you've got new guys? How much can you do in terms of scouting them? And then this weekend, when you've got, 4 different teams, 3 different teams a weekend, and then at Texas, how do you go about kind of scouting in the early season versus, hey, this is really more about us?
That's a really good question.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, that is a really good question. I take a lot of pride in having our team prepared, and there's 2 layers of preparation. It's your players understanding and knowing what you're requiring for them or what you need them to do for them to execute their job, as I was talking about earlier. So as a coach, I spend a lot of time on that and try to give each player a blueprint for success and communicate that as things change or adjust. And, we train and practice around the way we want to win. So the messaging is really clear. So that's one side of preparation. And the other part is the scouting. And I really love that part of the game. What can we find that will create an advantage for us? And so even though it's one game, like I'm sitting here talking to you on the radio and I have some video of Southern up on my computer screen right now, and I'm making some notes. Our pitching coach, Wes Johnson, obviously coming from the Twins, has his process, which is great. We'll blend that together. Mark Wanaka, who positions our defense, in my opinion, is the best at that of anybody I've ever seen. I take a lot of pride in preparing our offense for the opposing pitcher. So even though it's one game, we're going to do a good job because, that one win or loss could be the determination between hosting a regional or not. And so we owe it to our team and our players. If we're going to say that every game in college baseball is like a playoff game, then our coaches have to prepare that way. So we do put a lot of effort into it. And you're right, with 5 different opponents in a row, it makes for a lot of screen time, I would say.
Yeah, it certainly does. Anybody that maybe surprised you over the first weekend? Obviously we know you got a ton of talent and a lot of guys with talent, but did anything or anyone kind of jump out and maybe catch you off guard?
Not really. I think we knew we were talented. We had a very good fall practice session. We really tried we have some young players that are going to be superstars, and we really tried to push them along in the fall. For instance, the 2 fall dates that we had against UL Lafayette and McNeese, Brady Neal, Jared Jones, Paxton Kling, they probably got about 20 at-bats in those 2 days. And we gave them a lot of at-bats in the 3 weeks leading up to the season. So I think I was just impressed that they settled into college baseball very nicely this weekend. And that was a really, really good sign for our team. We have a guy named Ben Napolt who we picked up in the transfer portal late when we lost some guys in the draft. And after Virginia Commonwealth made their coach took the Notre Dame job, we were able to get a waiver for him to play immediately. And, he was a really functional player for us this weekend. I think he had 4 RBIs, played great defense. But probably the surprise, which wouldn't sound like a surprise to most LSU fans, was Gavin Dugas got back and rolling pretty good. And, he hadn't had a whole lot of ramp-up time. He's only had about 2 weeks of at-bats and was really happy to get him into the mix and making a solid contribution. That's going to be really good for our team if he can be a good player again.
Yeah, six hits. Coach, before we let you go, we do need to touch on the transfer portal because it has, and again, I repeat this, people that listen to my show probably are so tired of me saying this. It's not the transfer portal. That's just a clearinghouse. It's the ability to be immediately eligible when you transfer one time. And then obviously COVID has kind of changed things, and you have graduate transfers that can be immediately eligible. How has that changed the landscape of college baseball? And I guess more specifically for you guys, because you've hit so well in the portal, and obviously we saw Skeens as the player of the week in the SEC this week, and rightfully so. But tell me about kind of how you approach the transfer portal and getting guys out of it that can come in and have immediate success for you.
Well, I think it's been two layers. I think about last year, 2022. I mean, obviously I brought Jacob Berry and Bryce Collins and Riley Cooper with me from Arizona. You know, we also added Tyler McManus, who ended up being our starting catcher, hit 10 home runs in SEC play. And then Eric Razelman, a really good reliever who was drafted, I think, in the 4th or the 5th round by the Yankees. Like, I think often about if those 5 guys were not at LSU last year, we would have had a really hard time, like a really hard time. So I think I got a pretty good head start on understanding, like, this is kind of a game changer. And then once we evaluated where we were at the end of last season, good season, you know, high SEC finish, won a lot of games, but, you know, didn't have a starting pitching staff that would contend for a national championship. You know, we tried to get that figured out through the portal, and I believe we were successful in doing that. And then, you know, replacing Jacob Berry and Cade Doty, 2 of the best hitters in the SEC. You know, when Tommy White became available, I recruited him hard to get him. And so I think we've done a good job addressing immediate needs. And there's a balancing act of doing that. I think we have a superb freshman class, and I think using it by design, not by default or by panic, is what we're trying to do, and I think we've been really good at it so far.
Well, one other thing, Coach, as a man who is 6'4", 285, please tell Riley Cooper that I love him, and I appreciate him out there, you know, doing it for all the big men out there. I've seen enough 6'10", 200-pound pitchers in my life. I like a good 6'2", 270 out there on the mound, so I do appreciate him.
Yeah, you and me both. I mean, that guy's, I can't imagine my coaching career without him at this point. I mean, we got to Omaha in 21 at Arizona largely because of him. And then last year he pitched in pretty much every situation where an important game was on the line, and made a great development step with our pitching coach, Wes Johnson, and, you know, was lights out the other day, and excited about him this season.
Yeah, absolutely. It is fun to see the big boy out there succeeding. Coach, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. Good luck with Southern. I'll see you down there with Northwestern State here in a couple of months. I think we're at the end of the non-conference schedule, but definitely looking forward to it, and continued success, Coach.
Thank you for having me on.
All right. Jay Johnson, head coach of the LSU baseball squad, #1 in the country.